Hey, I think Julie is very happy at this setting, by the way. This is a gorgeous location for this commemoration of Julie. She was very much into natural settings. This house, as I understand it, is a Frank Lloyd Wright creation. That's perfect. And gratitude goes out, of course, to Nicole and Thomas for making all this possible, and even the gods cooperated with the weather today. So I'd like to invite Sonia to please say a few words here.
So I have jotted down a collection of memories that hopefully will be meaningful all of you to know about. One thing I would note about Julie is she never bragged about herself or talked about herself very much. She would talk to you about what you were doing. So as I'm meeting people here today, I'm learning things about Julie that I never knew. And so maybe some of the things that I will tell you, you never knew. And a lot of these memories, my most vivid memories of Julie come from when I was a very young child. And Julie had overcome a lot of obstacles by a young age. And one of them was the fact that our mother died when she would have been 14 or 15 and I was 4 or 5. And so that made her central to my upbringing. She was my sun and my moon, my big sister, and for a time really the most prominent mother figure for me in those early years. And these were hard years because there were 6 of us, and 4 of them were under the age of 5. So at that time, Julie and Eric as well stepped up and were doing more diapers and more feeding of 3 young children and more laundry. Remember the old-fashioned cloth diapers? She did all of that, and then to me, she was my sun and my moon, and I think she was probably required to allow me to tag along with her everywhere she went, but I never felt any resentment. And I remember so many outings in the summer with her and her friends, and going to Dufferin and swimming, and me jumping in the water into deep pools with the full knowledge that Julie was going to dive in right after, and she complained about how she had to save me again. And I remember riding in cars with her and her friends, and I started to remember the songs that were on the radio at the time that she used to sing. She had a beautiful singing voice, and I'm remembering songs like Yellow Polka Dot Bikini and Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road, and some song that I can't quite conjure, Willie Won't Something. Willie Won't Go. Does that mean anything to anybody? Big song that summer, Willie Won't Go. She used to sing that. It was her job to do my hair every morning. So although I probably had to get up for school earlier than her, I remember running down to the basement where her bedroom was and waking her up, and she was a little grumpy then. She'd do my braids every day. I remember hanging out a lot. I remember she was pretty popular with the boys, and I remember keeping solemn watch in the rec room after school. She'd be on the couch making out with a boyfriend. And I was there to make sure everything was okay. She was a very accomplished and creative seamstress. She could make clothes, she could alter clothes. Didn't matter. I mean, that girl had a figure she could put on a burlap sack and look great. But she could make all kinds of clothes. And for me, that meant all kinds of costumes. Halloween costumes for all of us. I remember clown costumes. I had a Daisy costume once. I had a ballerina outfit when I wanted to, when I was a little kid, and I thought I wouldn't end up to be this tall. I would dreamt of being a ballerina, and I dreamt that I would actually have coordination. But anyway, she allowed me to follow my dream. She made me a ballerina costume. And I remember one costume, the best one was the one she made Sean when he was 2 or 3. She made him a really lifelike mouse costume where just his little face peeked out. And he came to Grandma and Grandpa's to celebrate Halloween, and Brummy the dog was very convinced. Chased him up the stairs, Sean screaming his head off. She could do that kind of stuff. I remember that she would always have a sparkle in her eye and a great enthusiasm. She always had a positive outlook. She would put a positive spin on things. And so as a young child, that's very comforting, and it teaches you to always be positive. And I remember she always thought about the way animals thought. She she would notice their feelings before anyone else, and taught me a lot. And she made things magical. I remember if I got ready for bed well or on time, there would always be a fairy drink waiting for me in the fridge. I don't know if you guys remember that, but she would make, I think that must have been milk and sugar and blue food coloring, but it was magical to us. We got ready and there would be a fairy drink waiting for us in the fridge. I remember her beauty. I remember being so proud to have a sister who was a model, and I remember watching her in a beauty contest where she was robbed because she clearly should have won. And I remember when she moved out, so I would have been about 8 and she would have been about 18, and that, I remember feeling a profound depression, if an 8-year-old can feel depression, when she moved out. It was terribly sad for me. And she moved out with her friend Kathy into in a ramshackle house, and I remember going to visit her, being allowed to go visit her after a while, and she complained that she had a neighbor who I guess must have been depressed because he just played Desperado constantly. She was complaining about that. As an adult, we didn't spend as much time together, but we had camping trips. She joined our family on camping trips, walking around the campgrounds in her high-heeled sandals. That's how she was. And I remember I threw out my back on one of those camping trips, and her and Bill hobbling me to the bathroom every once in a while, because otherwise I was prone. Remember that? But as an adult, this is before the camping trips, because that would have been with Louie, she was concerned that I was being a spinster for too long. And she started to invite me out with her friends to bars and try to get me to talk to men in bars, which I was very bad at. And one day she said we were going out and she was going to take me somewhere special, but she wasn't going to tell me where. And I was mortified to discover that we were going to a Chippendale strip show with she and Misty and a bunch of friends who could holler along with anyone. It was, anyway. Julie, we miss you. What I remember about you most is your positive attitude and how you always light up a room and how you are always committed to family gatherings. And even through the worst of it, I don't remember you complaining. And even through your successes of your career, I don't remember you bragging. I've heard stories today that I never knew about her. And we miss your spirit, Julie. And you were taken too soon. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sonia. I'd like to ask John now, Julie's father, to say a few things.
Well, good afternoon. Let me introduce you to the family, because probably you don't know them all. So Sonia is Eric is the oldest now. Then there's Sonia, and then there's Brent, who's here, and his twin brother is over in Youngstown, New York, and he can't get across because of the coronavirus stuff. And Eric's family here, Michelle and Tricia, and Sonia's daughter over here is Savannah and her husband Louis. Brent's friend Ari and Nicole. You've all met Nicole by now. And Thomas, her husband. This young man here is Matthias, and Felicia is upstairs in bed. She's not feeling well today. Here's Anna, that's Eric's wife, and Louise is my brother's wife. My brother, who was 63, the same age as Julie, died last year suddenly. So, and we've got Courtney here, who's Brent's daughter. So, have I missed anybody of the family? Oh, Rita Roll. The last but
Not the least.
Okay. So, I got off the boat in Halifax in March of '65, and I made my way to Sept-Îles, Quebec, which is it was a iron ore boom town at the time. It's on the north shore of the St. Lawrence, and I had a job up there. And within a few months, I had met Graziella, or we called her Grace, And so I fell in love with Grace, beautiful, vivacious French-Canadian lady. And Grace had 2 children. One was Julie, one was Eric. Julie was 9 and Eric was 6. So they couldn't speak a word of English. But we did get along with, we managed to communicate somewhere or the other using sign language. And then we moved to Chippewa, which is now part of Niagara Falls. And so for a few months they went to a French school, but they hated it there, run by nuns. So then they transferred to a school in Chippewa called Sacred Heart. It was a Catholic school. It was a really nice school, and they liked it there. I remember one time about Eric, he would not learn to speak English, and it was getting time to go back to school. So we lived on Dorchester at the time in Niagara Falls. So I said, Eric, get on your bike, go to the store and say loaf, and come back with a loaf of bread. So he goes up, comes back, no bread. I said, Eric, go back and say loaf, one word, and come back with bread. Bread, oh, bread, yeah. So it still didn't come back. So now he's crying. I said, Eric, go and get bread. So he came back, and then he was all smiles. He had his loaf of bread. And then I said, see, it wasn't hard, was it? And he said, well, the lady was French. So then Sonia made her way onto the scene. And so Julie was she was a devoted big sister. And I remember Julie made a sunflower costume when her mother was in hospital for the kindergarten Halloween party.
We were in the newspaper.
And it won, and it was in the newspaper, published in Niagara Falls Gazette. So I showed her mother, Grace, the picture, and of course she shed a few tears because she was in hospital at the time. And then after Grace died, there was, just a second here, there was about a year and a half that Grace was in hospital, and Julie and Eric and me, all our lives were upended. We spent all our time, if we weren't at work or school, we had 3 kids, twins and Nicole, to look after for a time. We used to do 144 diapers a week, I remember that, the old-fashioned diapers. And we used to make Weetabix for breakfast. And Julie or Eric would feed the twins and Nikki 1, 2, 3, and if the mouth wasn't open, they didn't get it. And yeah. So I wasn't the greatest cook at the time, so they had sloppy joes alternated with shepherd's pie practically every night of the week. And then after Grace died, Rita showed up, and believe it or not, she didn't flinch. She didn't flinch when she found out I had 6 kids. On the first date, I gave her a picture of Nikki, the 2-year-old little cute little girl, and she said, "Isn't she lovely?" The next date, I showed her a picture of Brent, and she said, "Oh, isn't that nice?" The next time I showed her Ian, she said, "Wait a minute, how many kids you got?" I said, 6. Anyway, when we moved to Youngstown in New York, near Niagara Falls, Julie and Eric were already mature, and so they decided to stay in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Julie later studied, and she got into interior design, and for the rest of her life, she followed a love of interior design in Brampton, and then she moved into Toronto. Julie was very graceful and became a very good dancer, and she and Bill used to perform for the family at Christmas parties and family gatherings. And I remember one day they invited us to a dance in Mississauga. It was some posh place, and we went in, and we saw all these professional dancers dancing around on the floor, and Reed said, "We're not dancing, we're going to sit down." But I said, "Look at that couple over there." And she said, "That is your daughter." So that is how I remember Julie now, is the one picture showing her with Bill. I think that was a year before she got cancer. So that was the last time. Just a second. So the four of us, Rita and Bill and me and Julie, we went on holidays together. We went to Hawaii, we went to Arizona and Grand Canyon, and they came 3 years to where we stay in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. But the last couple, she wasn't all self anymore. She was, her health had been deteriorating, and so the joy and laughter had kind of disappeared at that time. And we did get to visit her last week, even though we were in quarantine. We had to get special permission from the doctor. So we turned up at 8 o'clock at night. They put her in an isolation ward, and they put us in all kinds of personal protective gear. And so we sat with her for about 3 hours, and she recognized us, and she said, "I'm glad you came." But that's the last we heard from her. And then the next morning, the COVID police called us, asked us to tell the truth, and so we told them that we'd gone out of quarantine, and we'd gone to visit her, and could we do it again? They off the phone for about 5 minutes while they discussed it, and they said, "No, you can't do it again." So that was the last time we saw Julie. So she died 2 days later. But I will always remember Julie as she is in that picture. That's what she was like just before this whole thing happened.
Rita, I grabbed your glasses by mistake.
Oh, do they work for you?
I'll be good. Thank you, John, for sharing these, and Sonia as well. I'll have a few things to contribute in a short while, but before I do, I'd like to give you glimpses of a couple of facets of Julie's life. One work-related, one dance-related. And I'm very happy that one of her work associates is here tonight, is Mr. Sean Whalen. Just to let you know what Julie did, she worked to a company based out of the States called Custom Decorators Incorporated, or CDI. So if you ever go into Costco or belong to a club, Direct Buy or something, you might see a little booth. And if you're interested in blinds, Hunter Douglas blinds and shutters, you might sign up for a consultation. Those are forwarded to CDI in the States, in Seattle. They then send them out to the various sales representatives throughout Canada and the US. Julie was one of, if not the top representative in North America for them. And that was her job then. They would send her the leads, she would phone the clients, and she'd visit them, spend a couple of hours discussing what their goals are for window coverings. In fact, by coincidence, a couple who are here tonight who happen to be dance students of mine were also clients of Julie's before they became dance students of mine, by sheer coincidence. At any rate, I'm going to invite Sean up to say a few words, but before I do, I received this morning an email. This is from Annalie Colby. Annalie was Julie's supervisor in the head office in the States. She really wanted to be here. And she said she thought about it right up till this morning and she just could not make it. But she comprised a short note here, which she asked me if I could read it to you about Julie and her work. So if you don't mind, hi Bill, I'm terribly sorry to say I cannot be there today. This morning I had to make the final decision and it was not easy. I would like to, though if possible, have you read my words regarding Julie and my tribute to her. Julie was the first designer I called when I took over my new position with CDI. She was the most successful designer we had ever seen with custom decorators, and #1 in North America. To say the least, I was intimidated by her numbers and her prowess. When she answered the phone, I was immediately relieved because, as like Julie always did, she welcomed me with an open heart. Her words were kind, grateful, and exuded the professionalism I would come to know as being just the way she is. After an hour or so of chatting about everything, from our mutual Quebec heritage to our love for animals, with a little custom decorators in between, I knew Julie would be a major part of my professional and personal success. I finished off by thanking her for all that she had done for us, and like Julie always did, she thanked me in return. It was on that day and in that conversation that I knew Julie wouldn't be a designer that worked for CDI. She would be my mentor. Anytime I met with Julie face to face, whether it was a convention in Las Vegas or an event in Toronto, Julie and I always had the time to have a private conversation about everything we enjoyed in common, with a little business mixed in. Our conversations would turn into hours, while I sat marveling at the passion she had for everything she touched. My questions to her always began with, Julie, how do you, whether it be managing the plethora of leads or managing a testy customer? I took notes of her answers, which always began with the infamous little giggle that she delivered frequently. Her answers were no secret. It was her ability to execute her passion that garnered her success. Julie had the ability to turn all her clients into followers who believed in her abilities, but more so believed in the commitment to making their experience an easy and comfortable journey. Julie had elegance and grace that marveled everyone at Custom Decorators. She had the ability to mix her skills with a compassion and understanding that I hold all of my team up to still today. So to you, Julie, I thank you, I miss you. So with that, I'd like to invite Sean. Where are you, Sean? There you are. Now, Sean is one of the installers, so if Julie had a client, the next step was getting those blinds installed. Okay, it involved measurements and the actual practical side of it. Julie used to do installations all on her own when she ran her store. She was very practical, okay? Not me. I could not do things like that. She was very good, very handy with things. But Sean was her go-to installer at the company.
Yes, thank you. I did write some words down. They're currently sitting on my kitchen table right now. I sometimes find with me, I tend to be better in these situations. It's more pedestrian for me to just shoot from the hip, so I'll do that. I was thinking about it's so overwhelming, it came as a shock, of course, right? But I was thinking, I was at a funeral years ago, and it was a friend of mine, and she'd lost her father. And I brought my daughter, she was 6 at the time. And we were just talking, and the urn was on the table. And my daughter said, you know, Beth, was your father a very tiny man? And Beth stopped and said, no, he was a great man. Right? And I thought of that, and I was thinking, what would I say if I had to eulogize Julie? And and our relationship was mostly professional. I did talk to her about some personal things from time to time, but I think your relationships with people can be different in different ways. And what I got from Julie was something that, and that's why I'm here. I feel it was important to share that with her family and friends. And there's a difference I find between confidence and self-esteem. And this is the thing that she gave me. She did say, Bill was telling me earlier, you were the best. You stood out. You were number one. And I did say to you, I just think that I was probably the least of the uncompetent ones, right? And that is probably how it started out, pretty much the way it was. But increasingly, as we did projects together, complex projects, sophisticated stuff, that I was quite shocked with her ability, and that's in comparison to all the other people that I worked with. And I started to believe that I could do some of this as well. So when I think of Julie, it's like I've taken on endeavors in my own life, and I think sometimes it's tethered to that strength that I got from her, and I wanted to share that. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean, for those words. I'd like to call upon now friends of Julie's from another side of her life, another aspect that many of you may not be familiar with, and that is her dancing side. She and I met on the dance floor. I'll tell you more about that shortly. But I did invite some of our students here with whom over the years we've gone out together on social occasions, Julie's ballroom dances in the Toronto area. And would the students like to come up and if any one of you feels comfortable in speaking about
These are the adult students.
yes.
I'd like to say something. That crosses both the dancing and her career. First of all, I had the privilege to dance with Julie. She was a generous dancer. She made you a better dancer. I think the group thinks that I met Julie through Bill. It's actually the reverse. Catherine and I are lucky enough to live in quite a remarkable condominium, and I say this not to brag, but to enhance the story. We live on the 30th floor. We're able to look out because of our windows, they're floor to ceiling, over the city of Toronto, all the way across the lake to Niagara Falls. We happened to see one of Julie's ads, and we asked Julie if she would do the automatic blinds. And she kindly did. And she was a good businesswoman, and we paid a fair price. And she came when the blinds were being installed. She was very professional about that. These are magnificent blinds. They're all automatic, and at the push of a button, they go up. They go down at night if we want them to. The remarkable thing is, one of the sections of blinds were too long to fit in the elevator. They were approximately 9 feet in length at the top. So in order to get them up, we had to carry those blinds 30 floors up. When I say we, Julie was there. We had to maneuver, manipulate them, get them around corners. And although we knew Julie was not well at that time, she mounted those 30 floors. Not a complaint. It was quite marvelous. I'm going to tear up at this. Each and every morning, when our blinds go up, reveals the world to us, we will think of Julie. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm Lorraine,
Yeah.
and in 2000, I think it was 2013, Eric and I went to a function at the same condo, and it ended up being a fabulous night because suddenly we saw this couple on the dance floor, and I mean, I was just in awe. Who are these people? I've never seen people dance like this before at Marina Del Rey. I mean, everyone's 80 or over, so they were so. So everyone, I mean, they were so elegant and so classy, and then we were fortunate to find out that they were residents of Marina Del Rey and were going to start ballroom dancing lessons. I mean, I could not wait to get over there and sign up, being a lover of dance. Well, that was my memory of the night, just seeing this couple glide across the floor. Eric's memory was a little bit different. His memory was that Julie got to pick someone to dance, and he picked her first. He picked him. He picked him first. Sorry. So, anyways, and he said to her, "I'm not a dancer," but as Sean, I think, said, she instills that security in you, the self-confidence that you feel you could do it. You don't feel threatened. But anyways, that started a few years of dancing with Bill and Julie. We did at least 3 or 4 sessions, each one being about 8 lessons. And we just had so much fun with them both. And I mean, to have a good teacher, it has to be somebody that will give you that confidence that you don't feel threatened. And Julie was that. She was warm, she was kind, she was gentle, she was patient. And even if Eric had to do something 100 times again, she would do it. And I'm not just saying that because Bill was the same. And I was watching over some videos the last couple of days, because we have several from when they taught us lessons. And before they would, like when they would get in their pose to start, just the way that she would look at Bill in the eye and have a little smile. I'm ready, you know, and off they would glide across the floor. And Bill was the one that did most of the talking while teaching, but Julie would interject, and she would give us advice like, you need to go home and you need to visualize dancing, and that'll help you. But she forgot to tell me to visualize her dancing and not me. For you to visualize Bill and not you. We tried. And other things that I just remember is, you know, Bill, if you've ever seen Bill dance, he likes to get in his little wild mood. But Julie stuck to the elegance, and she would just look at him and smile. We enjoyed many evenings out with them, New Year's Eve, dancing at these posh clubs that Julie's dad talked about, and the lessons. And Julie, we thank you because you gave us so many wonderful memories, and the dance goes on forever.
Well, it looks like Mark Tarnes. My name is Bill. I met Julie through Bill in their class about 5 years, almost 6 years ago. And I think all the things I want to say have been said already, so I don't know how to top all those things up. And I'll try not to choke up. So I'll just mention the top 3 that I remember, or I'd like to remember Julie as a person. One is her elegance. I think one of the things that when I first met her is, and then see Bill and her try to illustrate to us on how they dance, and you can see the elegance in her as a lady. And you know, when Bill was telling us by himself, and now with Julie in there, she even makes Bill dance elegant. So it looks like it's like one of the things as a student is we want to emulate, we want to be able to do that kind of thing. And so that's the other things gotta have, that's elegance. And also I found out is how smart she is. One is, once I found out that she's an interior designer, so it's in me as a businessman trying to always network, that kind of thing. And when we talk about our profession, and then I'm an engineer, and she told me afterwards, she also tried to network about it too, so it's a good things in a way that we, not only social things, but also personal things that we'll be able to work together. And the third item that I'd like to think also is the humanity side of it. That Julie has. One is I grew up in the 70s, so the disco era, the dance like the way you want to dance with the music. Now with Bill teaching me how to do it, you know, you have to carry it with all this rhythm that you gotta have. And Julie, when Julie's there, and then we go some social dancing that we have to do. She's very, even though I feel like I don't know how to dance, but whenever I dance with her, she brings out the best in me. To the point that even Bill sometimes says, "Hey, Gil, you got that dance very well." He doesn't know. He didn't know that it was Julie was trying to lead me through it.
Oh, I knew.
Now I know it now. But I think the most important part is just because the humanity side of it is, I think she was able to relate to me the way I understand it as an engineer type kind of thing. She puts it some kind of in a numerical form. When you're dancing, first of all, number one, you have to know the steps that you have to do. Second is you have to stay with the rhythm. Third is you have to plan what you're gonna do so that I can relate to the partner without verbalizing it, that we can do the dance together. And I said, okay, in engineering I usually do is, what is the passing mark? And that's my target. If the passing mark is 70, that's where I gotta study for. No more, no less. And she says, no, you have to do it all 100%. I says, okay, that's a different thing. But that's the kind of things that she was able to relate in the way that I understand it in a way. Because I guess, you know, and then I realized one time that Bill told me that also Julie wants to be an engineer sometimes, so hopefully maybe we can move together, that kind of thing. So, in a nutshell, to summarize it, is that her elegance, how smart she is, and the human side part of it. And as the saying goes, it's once, twice, 3 times the lady. And that's what I like to put on the head.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Very much. Well, I guess I have a few things to say. And forgive me if I have to refer to these notes because I sort of want to cover a number of things. I might have to look at these notes from time to time. We met, Julie and I think it was 2007, and it was at a dance. It was at a dance called Fame Filano, which is an Italian banquet hall in North Toronto. The evening was drawing to a close. Most of the people at the table I was seated at had gone home, and I saw this lady walking across the floor from a distant table. And I thought, I haven't seen her before, and I'm pretty familiar with the Toronto dance scene going back 2 or 3 decades. And I hadn't seen Julie, and as it turned out, that's because she belonged to her own dance club, and they went to different places than from where she was going. But I asked her for a dance. We danced. I said, would you like to join me at the table? Okay. She comes over and we struck up conversation. Next thing I knew, I asked her for a date and we settled on meeting at a movie theater, which was up there. It's called the Colossus Theater, if you know it, Highway 7 and 400. She was living in Brampton. I was living downtown, so we decided to meet there. I got there a little bit early, so I was in the lobby. And I'll never forget when she came through the door. Such a vision of loveliness. She took my breath away. She was a beautiful lady, but I was soon to learn that that beauty extended within as well. This was not an illusion. This was something. Her beauty extended throughout her and throughout the people that she was in contact with. Now, we've talked about her professionalism, her career, how successful she was. I'd like to share with you some of her other interests that you may be not aware of. You know about the dancing. She loved to watch science and wildlife documentaries. That was a favorite thing with her. The BBC in particular, she loved their documentaries about wildlife. And that's why you'll see on the obituary, you'll see at the bottom, if you're inclined, there's a couple of charities there. One of them is in relation to pit bulls. Why pit bulls? Because one of her pets was called Tank. And Tank was a tough-looking dog. Tough-looking, but gentle as a lamb, but misunderstood to the point where if we're taking him for a walk, even on a leash, of course, people would cross the street, walk the other side, seeing us come. They so feared Tank and his look, but he was a pussycat. So when Tank did pass a number of years ago, and Julie's been very cognizant of the neglect that pit bulls have suffered. They've been maligned in the media for many years, and the result is that I think the pit bull breed is the most represented in the shelters for that reason. So she loved Tank. She also had a pet before that called Nikita. Nikita was a husky, almost half wolf. Julie seemed to have almost a mystical attachment to Nikita. Although I never met him before my time with Julie, she often spoke of Nikita, how he was very intelligent. He used to like to round up other animals in the neighborhood. Or if they went for a walk, Nikita would be up there in the hill, sort of protecting her along the way, because he liked to roam about. She told me one time that he went missing for a day or so. Somebody saw him swimming in a small pond or lake near in Brampton, and reported it to the authorities as a wolf. And so the shelter picked him up, and somehow they found out that he came from Julie, and she got a call and was able to get Nikita back. But she loved that dog very much. She had 2 Himalayan cats as well, Casper and Misty. Beautiful Himalayan cats. Casper passed away maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. And every time I see a commercial for Casper mattresses, I think of that cat. How much Julie loved him. She was very conscientious about the environment. She did not like to see what's been happening to our world, what's happening to the oceans, to the air. That was a frequent topic on her mind. I'll tell you something she liked doing, which is very simple. On a warm summer day, we'd go up to a stream, maybe in a conservation area somewhere. We'd park the car, and then we'd find the nearest entry point for the stream. She'd roll up her pant legs. She'd have a little water slippers with her, and we'd just wade into the water, and we'd walk a couple of miles in the middle of the stream. Tank would be along too, splashing along there clumsily. He loved fetching sticks, by the way. I remember one time, the water got rather choppy and deep. At that time, Julie and I were back on the shore. Tank was hanging in there in the water. It was too deep for him. There was a rock in the center, and Tank sort of clambered up on it with all 4 paws like this. He's looking around. He would not leave the rock. Come on, Tank, it's not that. Come on, come on. And he wouldn't come. I had to finally wade out there myself and lift him up off the rock. This was Tank, fearless beast. Now, she had a very strong passion about one thing, more than one thing, political scene south of the border. In particular, about a certain figure down there with the initials DT. Now, this gives you an idea how clever Julie really was. She planned her exit from this dimension just before the Republican convention. How very smart of her, I think.
Yeah.
I often think she's looking down and feeling sorry for us that we had to be subjected to that, okay, over those 4 days. Now, every day there will be some comment about on that subject. I won't say anything more about it, but she felt strongly about it. And as Sonia mentioned, she used to like going to the swimming spot as a young girl. She told me about that often. They would go swimming there in the Niagara River, a certain section of it. Or was it Little Inlet?
Dufferin pools.
No, but before you,
Now it's different. It's
Julie and Eric learned to swim on the Niagara River just above the falls.
oh,
There was a rope hanging down, and they would grab the rope, and they would be okay. If they missed it, they would have gone over.
Oh my God.
All my surviving kids were good swimmers.
Mr. Rick was a long swim.
Yeah. So she showed courage even from an early age like that. And I can tell you that courage was exemplified the last 6 years. You know, the battle with cancer started in March 2014. It was already stage 3, maybe 3B, they thought at the time. It later advanced to the brain, but we were successful in knocking out the tumors in the brain, completely eradicated. And that was through a combination of radiation and cannabis oil, to be frank. The doctors who did that, by the way, were so stunned at how she eliminated the cancer completely that they used her as the model for future brain cancer patients, because they'd never seen that before. At the time, her license had been taken away from her. So without a license, she couldn't see her clients. So I quit my job at the time, which was I was working for a flower company. I had a full-time job with them. I quit my job and began chauffeuring her for the next year and a half, so that she could continue with seeing her clients. She got progressively better within months. So after about the second MRI in the brain, the doctor said, not only are the tumors gone, but the scar tissue was gone. And they said, we can't figure that one out. You had to call in other doctors to examine the x-rays. But even the scar tissue was missing. She was so impressed that that doctor, it so happened they had a symposium planned in the hospital. This is Credit Valley Hospital, Mississauga. They had a symposium inviting a cannabis expert for medicinal cannabis. And he came and spoke to the staff, to the doctors about the potential of cannabis. Julie was one of the examples that she gave to the doctor of what she'd seen with her own eyes. At any rate, it's been quite a journey. The cancer eventually ended up in her liver. Back in March, it progressed rather significantly, which was a surprise. And then she started to lose her energy levels started to decline, started to get winded as we were walking in the neighborhood. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew that she was having trouble eating food and liquids. It was a bit of a mystery to us what was happening there. But she gradually was losing strength. We didn't know what was causing it. I think ultimately from the tests that they ended up doing in the hospital, she had some ulcers, they said, which likely made everything taste really acidic. And therefore, because she would often say that tastes so acidic, I said, what is it? It's water. Even the water was tasting acidic to her. But I understand now there's a physical basis for her complaints. Anyway, one thing led to another. She developed some pneumonia the last 10 days. She couldn't overcome it, and she passed. But it was a gentle passing. But the days leading up to it were not so gentle for her. There were some anxiety attacks because of the inability to breathe properly. She was sedated some of the time, but I never heard her complain. In fact, I heard her 2 or 3 times saying she can't wait to get back to our apartment where she wanted to get in the swimming pool and start exercising her legs to build up her strength again. She said that as recently as 4 days before she passed. That's her spirit. She cherished the family get-togethers. This is a very special family. I came into it a stranger those years, several years ago now. Having come from a single mother myself, only child, to me, anything more than 2 people was a crowd. So when I would come up to the family gatherings and I would see 20 to 30 people, you know, I just wanted to sort of crawl into a corner someplace and let this all pass. I'm not coming.
You did all right, Bill.
Yeah. But Julie was always there to put me at ease. I just had to look at her. and she would smile, and everything was okay again. So what else do we have here? I couldn't resist getting in this one more thing about Donald Trump. I think Julie now, I am absolutely convinced, is living in an alternative or alternate reality up there, okay? I do believe in these things. I've studied them actually much of my life. She is here, her spirit's still with her, she just doesn't have physical form. But she's transitioning now to another stage of development. And new lives will be led. She will become an engineer. That was her passion in this life. Circumstances did not allow her this time around. But believe me, she will do that next time. She spent her life really caring for other people in her youth, and then her son Sean, and then her clients. Next time around, there's going to be an awful lot of people caring for her and allowing her to realize her dreams. Back to Donald Trump. So, she's in an alternate reality. Donald Trump's been living in an alternate reality for the last 4 years. Okay, so they do have that in common. And that's all I'll say about him. Maybe. It is. So what have I learned from being with Julie? Her favorite expression was one day at a time. She knew I had a propensity for letting my imagination drift into back alleys, which were not positive alleys at times. She would scold me for it, and I learned accordingly. She always lived in the now moment and invited me to do the same. We'd take our walks together in the neighborhood. She would always be pointing out the newest blossoms on the neighborhood trees, this and that to me, things that I would just blithely walk by and not pay any attention to. She did. She was so interested in nature and what was happening in the now moment. I learned that about her. She faced life with courage. She held her head high. And she always had good cheer for everyone. Always wore a smile. She never ever expressed pity for herself. Never complained about anything. That's been voiced by some of you already. But honestly, I never heard her complain about her situation with cancer or anything like that. Just the contrary, she'd be talking to me about, I think we should go, let's try planning a trip to Europe, or whatever it might be. And I would agree with her, but secretly I was worried, and it was purpose. What else? It's not much more, I tell you. I'd like to think that I can take responsibility or blame for introducing her to a few new elements of her life when we came together. The first thing was she never paid attention to baseball games before she met me. But I'm an avid Blue Jays fan, and she quickly became hooked. Okay, I mean, she was more addicted to the Blue Jays than I was. She would watch every game, and if she couldn't be there, when the game was live, she'd watch it at night on the 30-minute summary. The Raptors she also was involved with. Not quite as much as the Blue Jays, but still loved the Raptors too. I also introduced her to doo-wop music. You young ones won't know what that is, but that's like the music of the 50s, where there wouldn't be much instrumentals, just vocalizations. And the music, she would hear me playing it a lot, and it grew on her. And she said, I really do think I like that music now. So that's why some of it is on the soundtrack there that I compiled. The other thing, I guess I introduced it to the honorable tradition of bad puns, which I've engaged in all my life. I like to create puns. She would usually just shake her head, feel sorry for me. But darned if she wouldn't give it a try herself lately in the last couple of years. She said, "You see what you've done to me?" She'd bounce a bad pun off of me. Cheer on, say, okay, there's hope for you yet. So anyways, I'm certainly going to miss my life partner, my soulmate, and my dance partner. if you go to the obituary, if you haven't seen it yet, it's online, and we'll make sure you get a copy. You're going to see two motifs. One is of a dolphin leaping out of the water at the top. To me, the dolphin symbolizes a creature who leaves its usual habitat, soars in the air, and is willing to change its domicile, if only temporarily. Julie liked to soar in her life and make changes. The other motif there that you'll see is a butterfly. And I think Julie experienced a metamorphosis, if you like. She was extremely claustrophobic in life, going through MRIs, going into that tube. She would always have to take a few Ativans to control that because she was terrified of that and flying. But especially those